headphones that they see in front of them for the best experience and so that we make sure that you can hear me. Guys, you can hear me? Hear me well? All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ridhima. I'm your host for this morning, and I welcome you all to this revered stage, this platform, which somehow represents a convergence and conflux of some of the best minds, thought leaders, influencers, decision makers, policy makers from the world of banks, fintech, governments, corporations, discuss, delineate, and deliberate on the past, on the present, and the future of fintech. Welcome to the third edition and day 3 of Global Fintech Fest 2022. Can we give a huge round of applause at this point, ladies and gentlemen? This event is organized by NPCI, PCI, Fintech Convergence Council, and supported by Department of Economic Affairs, RBI, and IFSCA. Ladies and gentlemen, as you're aware, the format is that we have a lot of panel members from the world of fintech industry, banking industry, corporations, come here, discuss, deliberate about the different trends that is going to impact the future of fintech. It's filled with a lot of perspicacious insights, trends, and most importantly, pragmatic practices that will actually impact the way the business of fintech is done. So the first topic that we are going to be discussing and dwelling on today is about digitization of rural India payment system. As you're aware, around 70% of our Indian population resides in rural areas, and they contribute a key portion of the growth of country's GDP. A McKinsey report has also stated that despite the prominence of urbanization, the rural population is likely going to account for 63% of total market by the year 2025. Undoubtedly, the digital empowerment of rural India is important to bridge this digital gap. So our first panel discussion is based on digitization of rural India payment system. And to navigate, maneuver, and lead this conversation, we have with us our moderator, Mr. Giridhar GM, Chief of Offline Product Operations and Technology at NPCI. So can I request Mr. GM?
Chaitanya, not.
Oh, sorry, my bad. So there's a change. It's Mr. Chaitanya Pai, Incharge State Government Related NPCI. I'm so sorry about that. Mr. Chaitanya Pai, if you're around, please do join us on stage, yes. And joining him on stage are going to be the following speakers. We have with us Anita Pai, who is the COO at Yes Bank. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause for our esteemed panel members. Mr. Siddhartha Sanyal, Chief Economist and Head Research at Bandhan Bank. We also have with us Mr. Asheesh Pandey, Executive Director at Bank of Maharastra. So, thank you, sir. Mr. Chaitanya, on this note, over to you.
Thank you. Am I audible to the panel members?
Yes.
So, good morning to everyone over here. Is it audible? Yeah. Thank you. So, to start our discussion, just to give an introduction to the topic, basically the government of India has been long trying to enter the realms of cashless economy and fully incorporate digital payments as a universally accepted medium of transactions, especially in rural areas of the country. We know all about the urban story in India. However, it was only the bleak times of the pandemic, basically, that pushed the pace of cashless transactions in the country, increased telecom penetration in rural areas of the country, and basically that emerged as a silver lining to bring cashless transactions into focus. So my first question to the audience and to the panel out here is that, how has the pandemic changed the mindset of your customers? I think in 2 years of time, banks have adapted themselves in a big way, used technology in a big way. But what observations and what insights have you got into customer behavior, especially in these 2 years in the rural regions of the country? So I'd like to start the discussion with Anita ji here, if you could give your thoughts.
Thank you, Chaitanya. I think it is right to say that the 2 years of pandemic actually hastened the change. the change was happening. Probably would have happened at a much slower pace. What we've seen is actually the uptake in terms of our rural customers actually accessing consumer sites, ordering online, and of course paying for it online. Also, a lot of gaming, which has proliferated over the last couple of years. A big chunk of that, the users are from our rural areas. So you can see that the mindset of customers has changed, and they're willing and ready to do as much online as probably all their counterparts in the metro areas.
Thanks for that. Just a note on that, like you rightly pointed out, that gaming and consumer behavior on the internet has increased a lot. So basically, there's one stat that I'd like to point out that back in 2019, we had a customer base, a telecom customer base of about 227 million in the country. So that has risen to about 336 million in just 2 years. So that's a 48% rise. So in urban areas, we were already there, more than 407 million or so in 2019. So that has increased about 20%, which is understandable. But one thing that has happened, especially like Anita ji pointed out, is that although internet consumption increased, and Ashish ji, I was talking to you and Siddhartha ji earlier about this, that the banking transactions have not picked up that much of a pace compared to internet using customers using internet and the telecom penetration. So why do you think that could be the case in rural areas?
Shall I?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Chaitanya ji. And very good question. What Anita has said that it is the pace is always there. It was there earlier also. It moved a bit fast in between. But if we take the number of transactions which are happening across the country, the payment system. So if we take the banking transactions, if we see, there is almost more than 80 to 120% growth in the digital transactions. But then I would say it is not, the matured one. Means not we expect. We can expect much more vis-a-vis the total transactions happening into the system. The point I feel is the frauds, this is which is a concern of the regulator and the government and everybody in the ecosystem, which has picked up. So I believe that 2-3 things. One is the frauds, cyber frauds, and other things that are happening. So I will put into the two buckets. The first bucket is, where the technology is an issue. So maybe the people using technology as a somewhere, or maybe the intentions are better. And the second one is the intentions are not bad. There is no fraud, but then there is a reconciliation issue. So if there is a failed transaction, maybe because of the network, and then the people, if they do not get their money back, say within 1 hour, 2 hour, or it is taken like 5 to 7 days, 10 days, then there is an issue. They feel that they are out of funds, and when they are making a transaction, let me be very clear that it is they want to use that money, and if they don't have much, and they are out of funds, maybe even for 4 hours, so that is one of the fear that comes in their mind. And probably that is one thing where they feel that if then option is left to use maybe the physical channel. So this is what I feel is restraining to the speed which we are looking to the internet things happening and the digital thing happening. But then even then I would like to say that even now the speed is too good, banking transactions, and we see a month on month, I would not say even quarter to quarter, but then there is a huge sort of jump in the digital transaction in banks.
Sure. I think the point coming out is loud and clear. The value of the particular transaction to customers in rural areas is very dear. And basically the transaction time for the entire ecosystem needs to be brought forward and needs to be improved. So that's a very valid point. Siddharth, I was talking to you earlier about rural areas in Africa, and things have changed over there in a big way. I think you could give us an insight about how things picked up in Africa and what are your experiences from what you've seen over there. Probably draw parallels between the Indian rural areas and the places in Africa as well.
Sure. In fact, I mean, that's a very pertinent point, and possibly we have some learnings from them also to take. What we have seen as part of some of our strategic initiatives, we study various other markets, and where we have seen in certain parts of Africa, particularly sub-Saharan Africa, which are very low resource countries, and also significantly low in terms of infrastructure, they have actually made huge strides in terms of going forward to digital transactions in deep rural areas. And often these transactions are mobile-to-mobile transaction without even the presence or back-end integration with any bank account. Now, I think while there is a big lesson from them that how exactly that particular, they have been successful in taking that forward, we also have to do a bit of customization in terms of trying to adopt their model, because in a situation, if it is in absence of any other better word immediately, I'd say if it is a more dire situation, desperate situation, then instead of relying on a truck driver to shift some cash physically from a relative
Sure.
of mine from 500 kilometers away, I'll rather try to receive or send some amount of money to a relative who is possibly in a different city or in a different village. And I think that's particularly what is happening very clearly in their case. Our situation is not completely equivalent to theirs, which would make our initial progress a little slower, but eventually our model can be a mix of both bank and bankless digital, and that's why a little more broad-based and diversified model.
Excellent point. Actually, that leads to my second point. Actually, that I was going to come to the phygital model that we were discussing earlier. How basically do you see the phygital model or a pure digital model progressing in terms of lending for the banks? And later on, I'll come to the acquiring part as well. But if the panel can throw some light, Anita ji, to start with you, and Asheesh ji, later on, I would like to hear from you as well, please.
So I think both are currently working and working very well in the rural space. If I look at digital, we do a lot of what is called the JLG, the joint liability groups, or the self-help groups. Actually, that's probably the smallest of the loans that are given to women who come together, form a sort of a group, and take
Yes.
small ticket loans. And I can say that this whole process is digital. It has to be digital because for the banks, the cost of doing a loan is so critical that we had to figure out how to digitize the whole process, and it's working extremely well.
So probably you could give us a couple of points about how you've leveraged technology in digitizing this process.
So, right from actually gaining the details of the women who form the group, getting all the information about what activity they are part of. So all of this comes to us digitally. A lot of this is repeat business. So they take one loan, they repay it over the 8 months, 1 year, etc., and then they take repeat loans. That is typically the way it works. And so therefore the ability to retrieve also. So the second time when you go back to them, you don't have to go and do all of the data gathering. A lot of it is already available, and only the new pieces have to
It's
be put
more in
together.
a community spirit, and it keeps happening.
Exactly. So I think this part in digitized, in an entirely digital way, has worked very well for us. The phygital is something that I think works very well, to the point that was made earlier about worry about frauds, worry about information getting outside of where it is required to go. All of that, we can make sure that through the phygital model, we are able to pick up all the data and ensure that the process is carried out very well. Again, technology helps on handheld, like on tablets, etc. All the data collection mechanisms are there. We're able to take pictures of the area which they are at. So tomorrow, if we have to sort of look at where were the people living or where were they planning to do their piece of work, all of that can be evidenced later on. It can be stored and evidenced. So I think phygital also works very well. In terms of lending, I think one thing that would help all banks much more is if we can have a lot of the digitization of land records done fully. A few states have actually done this.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So, when that is there today, then the bank's ability to move faster and move it in a more seamless manner is much better. And that will be one thing that we will look forward to. And as more of that happens, you will find that more of the phygital processes could actually move into fully digital processes.
Thank you very much. So, just to add to your point out here, some IT secretaries from states like Karnataka, Maharashtra, they have been a part of panel discussions out here, and they have very clearly mentioned that they are not only just digitizing citizen data, but they are also looking at technologies such as blockchain, hyperledger, etc., to actually make it tamper-proof. And absolutely, the states are working towards that kind of an environment technically. Uh, Ashish ji, I'd like to come to you about the physical model, and then I'd like to hear from Siddharth ji as well. So over to you.
Yeah, I do agree with Anita, the what she told about the phygital. Let me put, my views into the three parts. The first is the why phygital, why not digital or why not physical. The point number one is that, there is a shift post-pandemic. Now people are, you have all the data, and before, the initiator of this, she already told all the data, like how much mobile penetration and the telecom penetration, internet penetration, mobile banking penetration. So what I say that now people are want the minimum hassles in the entire process. Point number one. The second behavioral what you want to know is that people still want to have a trust. So that is why physical something touch has to be there, particularly when the money matters or the finance is coming.
Absolutely.
Now the third point comes, if these two are there, the third behavioral shift which is happening is, now you will not get, still you will get 5,000 crore, 1,000 crore, the proposals. But the today's shift is that you may even get 10,000 rupees proposal, which you have to underwrite. Now, if suppose, if you see the trend, 38, 39% there is a growth in this segment, consumer durables, 50,000, 1 lakh, 2 lakh, in this segment only. Now, if we work upon my old model, and I cannot underwrite 20,000 proposals in a day with my people in the processes, in the appraisal system. So I need to be digital. Now, if I'm coming on that, so I feel the digital is compulsory. That was my first part. The second part, why it is physical, the government has come with the digital banking unit. Now that there are two issues with the maybe any bank or MFI or NBFC. The first is the cost of operations. So I agree what Anita said that, while you are underwriting 10,000 rupees, 50,000 rupees, you need to ensure that you are cost effective. And at the same time, you are meeting the expectation of a customer. So if you want to do that, then again, you need to be on the digital side. But at the same time, if I take the smaller loans or maybe the JLG and SHG, and SKDRDP is one of the finest example of that. So what I feel, you need to be very, very closer, to the group, to the people for the credit monitoring side and the collection side. And so what I feel, what is going to happen here onwards, that certainly there will be synergies between banks, maybe NBFCs, maybe smaller people, bigger people like that. So suppose a bank, if they engages, either there is one option of digital banking unit, so you can be closer to your people, with few people, some tie up with BC, so that arrangement is already on. Now if a bank engages or collaborates with an MFI or an NBFC, then you are very again closer. So probably it will give again to being physical. This is the second option where you are going to collaborate maybe 1 year, 2 year, 3 years down the line. And the third thing, what I feel, if we put together both of them, and making the system so well that it is that all our DLP protection, data leakage prevention and other things you are putting into right. And there are support system for resolution of customer grievances. I think these three, the phygital will work probably next to 5 to 7 years in our country.
Thank you very much, Ashish ji. I see a very clear trend emerging here regarding the phygital model, and I'd like to hear your thoughts about this as well, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's covered both by Anita ji and Ashish ji very clearly. I would possibly just try to draw an analogy. It's like teaching a kid the first lessons of cycling or swimming. You possibly you are better off to do a bit of handholding for the kid. Otherwise, that particular kid might be scared to go for the first step. But once he learns how to do the cycling, you try to hold him, he will object, right? So that's typically the case which we are seeing here also. So basically, what we if I try to see my bank's experience clearly, we have a lot of units and very no frill kind of accounts units in many deep rural places. Also, a lot of presence in the eastern and the northeastern part of the country, which is relatively less penetrated in terms of, or presence of banks is relatively less. So we started this particular model of the phygital model in our sense was that give people the experience of digital, but do a bit of handholding because their mindset is a bit different from the urban millennials. So you need to do a bit of initial handholding, which will generate the momentum, and we are seeing that. Now, having said that, I think I try to touch upon one particular point about the percentage growth in terms of some of the years that Asheesh ji mentioned, that in some of the cases we have seen numbers in possible growth in 60%, 80% kind of zone. But my sense is that the kind of base from where we started this particular journey, percentages would eventually mean relatively less. At some point of time, I will not be surprised when that real takeoff happens. Some of the percentages in some of the years might be a few thousand%. And there is nothing wrong and nothing to be served. It's exactly like the takeoff of a flight. When from zero you are moving in 20 kilometers, 30 kilometer kind of speed, but then when you really take off, the speed is absolutely not comparable. We haven't really reached that stage as a nation, but the way things are gathering momentum, very confident of seeing that over the course of the next 3 to 5 years.
So that's very heartening to know that the best is yet to come for the Indian economy, especially for the rural sector. One point regarding strategy of micro lending that we were talking about earlier. Have any of your banks adapted to this particular trend of the internet boom and post the pandemic? Has any of the bank probably changed their strategy in terms of micro lending or reaching out to their customers other than what's basically been discussed here? Siddharth ji? Oh, yeah.
Very clearly, yes. Yes, in the sense, I'd not say the broad philosophy of the business or business model, but operationally there had been a very significant difference in terms of we now give our, if I call it our, some of the staff, field level staff, frontline staff who are interacting with them, they are also trying to become a lot more efficient in terms of capturing everything digitally. That gives us provides us a situation where the same data flow actually goes into many different pockets. The credit analysis is done very quickly, parallelly, and the decisions are taken and conveyed very quickly. Also, we have been able to offer a lot more flexibility to the customers, wherein earlier they were, this micro-lending customers, they were mandated to come in groups. Now, in case of a lot of them, we had been able to give them the flexibility to make the payment in a different format electronically. And we are, as I said, that we have started seeing a lot of pickup in that across geographies, and which is really, really heartening to see. And I tend to say that there has been very decent pickup also in rural and deep rural areas. Connectivity is an issue. In areas where you have relatively good connectivity, the experience is very different compared to others.
Excellent points. Ashish ji, you were mentioning about land records verification and operationalization of many processes at the back end. Could I have a few thoughts on that, please?
When we take, particularly since you have talked about land records, I believe that you're talking about the underwriting of the loan.
Exactly.
Loan part. So let me put forth, we have been lending all the banks and BFCs. But what I feel, with the collaboration with the fintechs, with the data aggregators and all the people, The underwriting which is happening now is far, far better, when it was happening in an individual basis. So that is the power of, the data.
Sure.
Because you were doing the underwriting, appraisal with your own data, internal data, not much of the external data. Maybe with the bureau companies you will get something, but then otherwise not. So the first point of engagement I feel is, I'm just giving is this, when you get outside data, it is one of the best thing, quality of asset increases. The second important point, the end use, which is a concern for any lender. Now, if you get if you are in a position, because again we are going to deep. So certainly when you make, finance a bridge or a railway siding or an airport, you know where the site is. But when you are financing a crop, and particularly, that a small 1 hectare or something like that, you do not know actually where it is. And somebody has to go. You cannot make it figure out in your appraisal process, you cannot keep in your records. So when this digitation land record has happened, particularly Karnataka, let me tell you, they are the leading one. Even Maharastra is going very strong.
Yes.
So what has happened, there are even some fintechs, who are giving the geolocated that which you have financed. So I think what best can be the use, and from that you can even see how exactly the crop is, where that is, if any flood has come. So generally what happens if any flood or anything rains have come, so entire 50-kilometer area will say there is a something natural disaster. But what happens that you can figure it out, how is the crop, whether anything has happened, drought or something, and you can very well locate which is the area which has been, mortgaged to you. So I believe if we are talking about, other than the microfinance, JLG and SHG, if we are talking about the financing, the rural India, where is the agriculture of the higher amount, this land record, I think this station is going to make a big headway. And the players which are there, my compliment to them. So very good that they are bridging the gap from the government side, state government side, where the database is there of the records, and with the banks, appraisal system, and that you're making it seamless from end to end. Probably it will give a way to, I believe, review renewal is itself happening right now, STP. So I think going to that level, it will help a lot both to the borrower and to the banking industry.
So
Thank you.
one thing I would like to add here is that I think there are a lot of databases that must be available with the government regarding our rural population, especially farmers, etc., because a lot of subsidies, etc., are given to them. I think just like, today a lot of banks use GST data as surrogates to calculate what could be the credit worthiness of the particular company that we are evaluating. Similarly, if you have access to such databases, maybe the ability to use those as surrogates to figure out what is a good loan amount to give, which will be good for the farmer and also for the bank, I think will be really good. So if I think that's one of the things that all of us could do together is to figure out what databases are there and how to make it available.
Excellent point. So I'd like to add on that basically government departments and IT departments, especially from governments of different states, have been talking to us. And to put it down in a layman's language, basically they've been saying that look, our land record department has all the records that are needed for farmers or people who work in rural areas who are looking for loans or who are looking for any kind of government services. However, our IT team is not talking to them from a technology point of view. So the paperwork needs to be done. The loan processes have to be filled out. Land record department has to actually approve the loan papers, so on and so forth, which is a process that takes about 6 weeks. Uh, states like Karnataka, like you rightly pointed out, and even in Maharashtra, they're working on models, API models of technology, where a land record department can talk to the IT department, and consequently, they can talk to the banks and make it very easy. So a process that lasts for about 6 weeks to 8 weeks can be basically finished in a matter of 2 or 3 days. And that's about it. And even the underwriting part, like you mentioned, that even remotely through technology, the land, basically the land plot can be scoped out and basically the underwriting can be done. So the verification part and the exchange of information part is being worked upon by a lot of governments. I think that's only going to benefit rural India. So I'm going to open it up to audience questions after this last point. Uh, my my question to the panel members out here is that, especially we are aware that a lot of technology service providers are out here in the audience today, and a lot of banking personnel are there out there as well. From a banking community point of view, what's the one message that you'd like to give out to the ecosystem?
Okay.
Ashish ji, will start with you.
Yeah. Thank you. Very wide question, but very pertinent one. See, I will take a quick shot so that my other panel members can also contribute. I will put it in two, three, the buckets, my replies. The first is, understanding the consumer. So very, very clear that they want no hassles. Secondly, they want to be secured. And third, they want to, somebody to understand them, their need. Because you are not meeting them directly, as we talk digital or phygital. So your system and everything should be in place so that you understand through analytics and behavioral analytics, I should say. The first point is that understanding the consumer shift. The second comes, the banking side. So your technology. So I would say up till now we were talking about, earlier 20 years back about the banking, the lending and other things. Then we talked about technology in the 90s and 2000, 10 and something. Now 2015 hours we are talking about the digitalization. Probably technology is there, but the question is who is going to provide the technology? Now I'm opening a very good question even for my other panelists.
Yes.
So the question is, there is a supplier of the technology, there is a user of the technology. My one point is that digital is digital, but then there is something probably after 1 year or so you will hear more so about collaborations. Because collaboration, what I always say to even my people, which is the cooperation, coordination and collaboration, which is 1 degree higher than each other. So if we take, the customer relationship, the highest is when you become a stakeholder. The two people, demand and supply, become a stakeholder to each other. It means you are understanding each other issues and you are so closely knit that you are above the level of, thinking about profit and negotiation and all that. And you are living a long-term relationship. Now what is going to happen is, technology will be there, but then it will only yield 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. But we are in an era where 1 plus 1 is going to be 11. Now how you are going to 11, you can be 2 or you can be 3 or 4 or 5, depends upon the level of engagement between the 2 and 3 in the ecosystem. So in the ecosystem, when you're talking about, there is a regulator, there is a government of India, there are various banks, payment banks. So now when I told about the, the transactions, the frauds which is happening, you need to give a message to the users that you are secured, you don't worry. That would only happen when you are having a frequency of 6 times reconciliation during the day, not T plus 1 or T plus 2. So that involves, collaboration between all the partners. So what I foresee, we are in that evaluation stage, whether the private sector banks or the public sector banks or any people in the ecosystem, including the government, including the Reserve Bank of India. So what I feel that this 4 or 5 pillars which I took across right now, going forward, probably next 2 to 3 years, you will see lot of collaborations happening. As I told MFI, if I go alone as a bank or maybe the bigger banks, it is impossible. You have to onboard lakhs of people. Is it possible? Now, if I take an example, the India Payment Bank or India Post or maybe any MFI, they are already having the, can I collaborate, use that network? So all the three, like, like JLG and SSG, that, the MFI and the bank, all three are in the win-win state. So now the collaboration is a one word which gives always a win-win state to everybody. So my here take is that when you talked about ecosystem and the rural particularly, we are talking about the rural. So when rural means there has to be collaboration between the ecosystem, and then probably it will really yield the result what we are expecting.
Some excellent points made there. Thank you, Ashish. Siddhartha, I'd like to move to you. What's your one message on behalf of the banking community that you'd like to give out to the ecosystem out here?
No, I think Ashish ji summarized it brilliantly. Uh, just to take it forward, maybe we can think of a few key areas. The collaboration, obviously, the collaboration we cannot ignore in this particular context. Also, possibly two other C's we can think of is possibly confidence and cognizance. What I mean by that, collaboration is across various channel partners and potential channel partners. For example, he mentioned about the India Post, where the network has expanded and has come under a more integrated system. It's up to us now how exactly we take advantage of that. Also, a number of fintech partners which we should leverage. The other part is confidence. We need to ensure that in the initial part of the experience, and initial part means we mean the first few years, that the confidence of the user can never be hurt. You have to ensure that. And if there is a need for taking into account, doing a quicker reconciliation and all, that's possibly critical. Think of two e-commerce platforms. The one which is a little more lenient and supportive in terms of product refund, return, taking into account the customer's complaint, ends up taking the lion's share of the business, even though in the short run it may actually incur 1 or 2% more in terms of those costs. And possibly the third part is always giving people the feeling that your concerns are, we are cognizant about your concerns, your issues, and that's the need for a person, because this particular segment, again, at the cost of repetition, I would say this particular segment is very different.
It requires special assurance.
Special assurances, they are very different from the urban millennials who are very fine in terms of pressing a few buttons, get the transaction done. They're very happy that we don't have to interact with a person. Here, the confidence comes from certain Mr. Such and such has told me this, is kind of in the initial phase that particular support needs to be there. So you have to manage your costs accordingly. The large part of the back-end work would have to be done completely digitally, but some bit of presence in terms of a personal touch here would go a long way in terms of ensuring that takeoff.
I think it resonates with our earlier point about the phygital part of the model, where some kind of human interaction is necessary, especially in the rural region, to give confidence to the end users. And even different departments who are working in the background, be it banking departments or even the government departments, to feel comfortable or at ease with doing technology related transactions. Anita ji, I'll move over to you now. Your thoughts to the banking and from the banking community to the ecosystem.
I think the potential is large. Any help that we can get from any part of the technology providers, any fintech, I think will be welcome. In addition to whatever both Ashish and Siddharth said just now, I would really say two things. I think a lot of the products that banks made for the urban sector is what they have just transposed for the rural customers. That may not be so. So taking off from the first point that Ashish made about saying, do you understand the customer? Based on that, I think developing the right products and ensuring that all our systems are able to deliver that product the way it's meant to be, I think that is very critical. And the last part is about the last mile connectivity. Finally, I may do everything that makes a lot of sense, but if I'm not able to do the last mile, that is actually how the customer perceives the transaction or the communication that's coming to her from the bank, all of that becomes immaterial. So I think these are the two areas which I think need special focus. But like I said, there's such a large opportunity, such a large part of the country for which we need to deliver the right services, right products. I think whatever we have today is probably not adequate, and any additional products or services coming from any part of the ecosystem will be very welcome.
Yeah, can I add?
Sure, absolutely, absolutely.
One thing,
Thank
when
you.
we are talking about phygital, so actually what people feel, that you are using digital technologies and then physical person is going. That's fine, that's good, that is happening. Let me put one more, like a perspective. Maybe down the line, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, actually the phygital will not be actually the human being going and doing everything. Now, on one hand, you see metaverse coming. Now, I am putting forward, you are having a very well-developed call centers with any of the institutions. Why video-based AI cannot be implemented? That is what I am talking about phygital. So probably you will feel, particularly in BFSI sector, the video and audio based, artificial intelligence based, the call center, which is may become a back office branch of any bank and going to even do the transactions. So somebody wants to do NEFT and RTGS, so you want all the papers, or either he has to go by the mobile banking or internet banking. So on the move, if somebody on the video with, see, video KYC is already there if you take the regulations. So if the regulations, the ecosystem, what I said, the collaboration. So probably phygital will have a different meaning here onwards.
Absolutely, that's a very interesting point that you made there. We are probably on its way now with the video KYC procedure. It's probably already started, as you pointed out. In the interest of time, I'd like to open up the panel out here for a couple of questions. But before I do, I'd like to summarize 2 or 3 very clear trends that have emerged from this conversation. The phygital trend has emerged, the hand holding of customers has emerged very clearly. The speed of transactions was already there, as pointed out by Asheesh ji. The speed of settlement is something that will give comfort to the rural sector, and the human assurance that your transactions are going through, and this is how it's done. I think once somebody enables rural India to go on that journey, probably fintechs could have a different approach towards developing applications and UIs for the fintech sector, for the rural sector in particular. So that clearly comes out. The lessons learned from different countries like Africa that Siddhartha pointed out, they could be adopted in rural India as well. There is a strong support from the infrastructure side of things. Governments giving a very great push towards enabling that infrastructure with 5G also coming into play. So I'm sure we are going to see a very big boom in the telecom and internet connectivity side of things. Having said that, these trends are very clear. I'd like to open up the panel for a couple of questions. I think we've got a couple of minutes if anybody's got any questions.
Am I audible now? Yeah. So very good morning to one and all present in the panel. My question is to Mr. Sanyal. So we all know that Bandhan Bank has pioneered the rural banking system, and post 2010 MFI crisis and the reforms that were made by the RBI in the year 2012 for the NBFC sector has made all the financial institutions to go to become digitized for the lending part that came into full swing in the year 2017-18. So my question has two folds. How Bandhan Bank as an organization is envisaging the collection part, and what is the roadmap to that? And the recent circular which came from RBI in the month of March, that has increased the cap and the number of lenders in the rural sector. So how is this going to play? Because as you mentioned that Bandhan Bank has started collection and lending to individual members, don't you think this will dilute the JLG and SHG model at a larger scale?
Well, I'll put it this way. In terms of your second question, that in terms of some of the caps and all, we internally had always been very, very conservative in terms of some of the numbers. If the regulatory requirement is up to a certain level, we typically love to keep a bit of a margin with ourselves. We are very stringent in terms of our credit evaluation, and then go ahead about that. So the new set of norms also doesn't really put too much of a change imposed on us directly just because of that. The other part of the question, that whether this is it's a move from the earlier group lending model or something like that. I think it's not a lock, stock and barrel movement, and it's rather offering our entire customer base with greater number of options. We do evaluate very clearly, first on the basis of income, then on the maturity of the business, and their credit history, and their overall maturity, some kind of a both quantitative as well as qualitative judgment on our part, that whether this particular person is fit for a group lending model or is or can actually be moved to something beyond that. And there, even if the customer prefers in one particular way, and even if the income is significantly higher, but if there is a lot of volatility, seasonality, et cetera, we are pretty reluctant to move them that way. So it actually is driven by a large number of factors, very rigorous method. And then if we see that, then we offer people or that particular segment greater flexibility. Now, it doesn't really reduce any focus, any rigor from the group lending behavior for which we think that is the segment for whom it's needed. But for a segment who have possibly moved on from that particular model, and it's possibly little more easier for us also to deal with them, as well as for them to also carry on their regular business. They are possibly not needed to come to a group every week. They have gained that maturity in terms of both their business and thought process, and then possibly we are happy experimenting with the new model. And the initial results for the last few years had been pretty encouraging.
Next question. I could see someone over there. Please.
I can, yeah. Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to ask to the panel, am I audible? I just wanted to ask it to the panel that every time we are talking about the rural transformation when it comes to the kind of fintech evolution we are having in the country, all we are talking is about the digital lending part and the payments part. But there's a huge chunk of, like, almost everyone knows, more than 97% of people are not integrated to the financial markets. So why aren't we putting some efforts in that particular context of, allowing them to leverage the financial products which the tier 1 cities people have been leveraging instead of going for FDs and RDs kind of stuffs? Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anita, ma'am?
Yeah, so I think there's, I think the point that we talked about, saying that what is the aspiration of the rural customer and what is the size of it. I think that is the most important question here. All the products that we have are actually amenable for them to use too. What worries is the in terms of the infrastructure that is there, because some of the technologies are fairly heavy and are very time bound. So if you don't do a click in within a couple of seconds, that particular rate may go away, etc. So I don't think that from a bank point of view, we are saying we are not inclusive in these products. But I think what we are saying really is that the aspiration today, or is the aspiration more simpler? I think the second part is to say that when is the right time for them, and it has to be a fairly decent size. It can't be this one person in a million that is interested. It may not then make economic sense.
Can I also?
Yes, please, Asheesh ji.
See, there are three things which you can offer to a customer, apart from the fourth, which is very common, which is grievances and the hand-holding, which is a call center sort of. Three things. One is the asset, liability, and services. Let me put the entire the banking and finance in the three buckets. So actually, if you ask me as a banker and even a technology partner or anybody, the digital lending is a bit tougher part. Otherwise, if you take the services and the liability side, it is very easy. So even now this BSBDA, now I'm coming to the rural, it is already online sort of. And the second is video KYC coming into the picture is fully online. Even the person is not a BSBDA. Now if I take the creation of the FD and other is all digital only, even breaking of the FDs, even taking loans against the FDs. Now I'm going beyond actually what you wanted to know. Can I invest in mutual fund? Can I invest in stock? Can I even have a GSEC of 1 unit? So today, if you see, there are players in this, and they are having the tie-ups with the banks or the NBFCs, and this is offered to everybody. Now I would go to the third part, where if you want to make a nomination, you are not nominated anybody in the account. That is one of the services, and you want to check whether nomination I have done or not, and you want to nominate. Can you do at the sitting at home? Yes, NECL is there, which helps digital document execution. and it has been implemented by banks. So sitting at home, you can do the nomination, you can do all the things, which is even the lockers. Why you cannot? You can, if you go to the bank website, you can see which locker is vacant, whether it is down or not. Choose your own, select, and that the agreement 500 rupees is there. You can execute through NESL digital document execution, and you can purchase your locker then and there itself. When it is convenient, you can go and keep your belongings. The third important, coming to Government of India, Atal Pension Yojana, NPS, Suraksha, it is already on the way. So what I feel that even for the rural, not only the lending part or the onboarding on the liability side, on the services, actually the government schemes you can implement very well. And in Rajasthan, I have seen the farmer can online take the subsidy, put the application, and even bank finance is happening. So I think it is on the way. Yes, we are evolving, and
I think what Ashish ji said resonates with Anita ji's point out here is that the question is not whether we can do it. We can absolutely do it. That is what the banking community is saying. The real question is the time for it, has the time come for it yet? And will the user basically go to that stage where these advanced services are used? So on that note, I'd like to draw the session to a close. Shri Asheesh Pandey, ED of Bank of Maharashtra, Shri Siddhartha Sanyal, Head of Strategy from Bandhan Bank, and Shri Anita Pai, Chief Operating Officer of Yes Bank. I'd like to give you a very big thanks on behalf of NPCI and IMAI to be on this panel, and I'd request the audience to give a very warm round of applause to all our panel speakers here. Thank you very, very much for being here today. Thank you.
You can remove it, sir. Yes. That was again a very engaging round of discussion, ladies and gentlemen. On this note,